poor girl meets her childhood love, not knowing he's a millionaire, and falls in love with her again. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Emma had no idea that the person she bumped into was more than just a stranger from her past. Life had a funny way of bringing people together often when you least expect it. Let's go back to the beginning with Emma. Emma Brooks stood nervously outside a trendy New York City restaurant, clutching her phone like it might offer her some comfort. The glowing reflection of the restaurant's warm lights in the glass window only reminded her of everything she wasn't. Her dress was secondhand, the shoes scuffed from too many days of running around, and her nerves were as frayed as her worn-out jacket. She had promised her best friend Jenny she would go on this blind date, but as she scanned the bustling interior, her heart was beating wildly in her chest. She muttered to herself, trying to steady her breath. Table S. Table S. Finally, her eyes locked onto a sharply dressed man sitting alone at the back of the room, scrolling through his phone. That has to be him, she thought. She took a deep breath and made her way over, her shoes clicking loudly against the polished floor. With a forced smile, she greeted him. "Hi, you must be Kevin. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you." The man looked up, his eyes widening slightly, clearly caught off guard. He blinked a few times, seemingly unsure of what to say. Hi, Emma," he stammered, still clearly confused. Emma mistook his confusion for shyness and quickly slid into the seat across from him. She fidgeted with the napkin in her lap, trying to fill the awkward silence. "Oh, I know, blind dates are a bit weird, right? Jenny said you might be a little quiet, so don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us." The man opened his mouth to correct her but hesitated. He looked at his phone, then back at her. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, and he leaned back in his chair, clearly intrigued by her presence. "Right. Blind dates are something else," he agreed, his voice calm yet warm. Emma let out a nervous laugh, feeling slightly more at ease. "Tell me about yourself," she said, hoping to get the conversation flowing. She nervously took a sip of water, her mind racing with 1,000 things to say, but she knew this wasn't the time for awkward silences. "I'm a waitress," she admitted with a shrug, her cheeks flushing slightly. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Well, most of them anyway. How about you? What do you do?" The man, still smiling, paused for a moment before responding. "I work in tech." "Tech?" Emma repeated, her interest piqued. "Like coding? Apps and stuff? I'm terrible with computers." The man nodded, still smiling faintly. "Something like that," he said, his voice warm but a little reserved. As the conversation continued, Emma found herself laughing more than she expected. There was something about him, a quiet confidence, an ease in his presence that made her forget all about her nerves. She shared stories of her struggles, working double shifts at the diner, her dream of one day opening an art studio, and even her constant battle to pay rent. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't judging her, who was actually listening. He seemed genuinely interested, even though his responses were minimal. But when Emma received a text from Jenny, everything changed. "Hey Emma, where are you?" "I'm at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you, Kevin." Emma froze. She stared at her phone, her heart sinking into her stomach. She looked up at the man sitting across from her, her face turning beet red. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. The man's smile faltered, and for a moment there was a brief flicker of guilt in his eyes. "No, I'm not," he admitted, his voice gentle but apologetic. Emma's stomach churned with embarrassment. She jumped to her feet, her face flushed with shame. "Oh my God," she muttered, grabbing her coat and rushing toward the door. "I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. This is so embarrassing." But before she could leave, the man stood up too. "Emma, wait," he called out, but she was already halfway out the door. She didn't turn back. The cool evening air hit her face, and as she hurried down the street, her mind raced. Had she really just made a fool of herself like that? But for some reason, despite everything, she couldn't shake the thought of him. Liam Parker, the man she had just met. Why had it felt so different? Why had it felt right? Emma rushed out of the restaurant, her heart pounding in her chest, her mind replaying the embarrassing scene over and over again. She couldn't believe she had made such a mistake. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, and as she stepped out into the cool New York City evening, the lights of the street lamps seemed to mock her. She clutched her coat tighter around herself, feeling small and out of place. She had promised Jenny she would go through with the blind date, but now she had ruined it all. The thought of returning to the restaurant and apologizing seemed impossible, so she kept walking. She found herself at a quiet park nearby, sitting down on a bench to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, half expecting it to be another message from Jenny. But it was a text from Kevin, the man she was supposed to meet. "Hey, it's Kevin. I'm at table 7. Are you coming?" Emma felt a pang of guilt, but she didn't respond. She just stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. After a moment, she turned off her phone, wanting to forget the whole thing and move on with her life. But as she sat there, her thoughts drifted back to Liam. Liam Parker, the man she had just met, who had been so kind to her despite her mistake. She couldn't get his face out of her mind, and for some reason, the feeling of embarrassment faded as quickly as it had come. In fact, the more she thought about it, the more she realized there was something about him that felt different. He was quiet, sure, but there was a warmth in his eyes that she hadn't seen in anyone else for a long time. Something in his smile had made her feel at ease. Was it possible that she had made a real connection with someone, even if it was by accident? The thought seemed ridiculous. She was just a waitress, after all, struggling to get by, while he was clearly someone from a completely different world. But there was still that pull, that curiosity, that made her want to know more about him. The next day, Emma went about her usual routine, waiting tables at the diner and trying to forget about the awkward night before. She didn't hear from Liam, and she figured it was for the best. Maybe she had read too much into their brief encounter. But then, just as she was wiping down a table, the door of the diner swung open, and in walked Liam. She froze, the rag in her hand falling to the floor. She wasn't sure what to do. She hadn't expected to see him again, not like this, and definitely not in a place like this. She watched as he scanned the room, his eyes landing on her, and then he made his way toward her. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice calm but warm. "I know this is unexpected, but I thought I should apologize for last night." Emma blinked, still trying to process the fact that he was standing in front of her, in her world now. "No, it's okay," she stammered, shaking her head. "I'm the one who should apologize. I made such a fool of myself." He smiled, that same quiet smile from the night before, and she felt her nerves settle a little. "It was a misunderstanding. I'm just glad I didn't scare you off." She laughed nervously. "No, you didn't. I wasn't expecting to sit at the wrong table and meet someone like you." Liam tilted his head slightly, his eyes studying her. "Someone like me?" he asked, his voice curious. Emma bit her lip, suddenly unsure of what she meant. "I mean, you're just so different from everyone I meet. You're not like the people I usually talk to." Liam raised an eyebrow, a knowing look crossing his face. "And who do you usually talk to?" he asked softly. "People like me, or people like you?" Emma was caught off guard by the question, but she quickly shook her head. "No, I didn't mean it like that. I don't know. You seem real, like you actually listen." Liam smiled again, and Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest. "Well, I'm glad I could make an impression. Maybe I could buy you a coffee sometime and we could talk more. No expectations, just a conversation." Emma hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure if this was just some kind of pity offer or if he was genuinely interested in getting to know her. But there was something about him that made her want to trust him. She nodded slowly, her heart beating a little faster. "I'd like that," she said, smiling for the first time in what felt like ages. Liam gave her a small nod before turning to leave. "I'll see you soon, Emma." As he walked out of the diner, Emma couldn't help but watch him go, her mind racing. What was this? Was this just another mistake? Or could this be the beginning of something real? She wasn't sure, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. She had no idea what the future held, but she was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to find out. Days passed, and Emma found herself thinking about Liam more than she cared to admit. She had agreed to meet him for coffee, and although she tried to convince herself that it was just a friendly gesture, there was something about him that she couldn't shake off. She had always been careful with her heart, but something in his quiet confidence, his genuine interest, made her feel safe, like she could let her guard down for just a moment. They met at a small, cozy cafe on the corner of her street. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a place where she felt comfortable. As she stepped inside, she spotted Liam sitting at a corner table, his face hidden behind a newspaper. He looked up when she entered, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Hey, Emma," he said with a warm smile. She smiled back, her heart racing just a little. "Hey, Liam," she replied, walking over to join him. "I hope this is a good spot for you." "It's perfect," he said, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. "I'm just glad we could finally meet again." Emma sat down across from him, still a little unsure of what to expect. They had only spoken a few times, but she felt like there was something real between them, something more than just casual small talk. The conversation started out easy, with Liam asking about her life, her dreams, and her work. She found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone else in a long time. It was as if he wasn't just listening to her, but actually hearing her. "So, what about you?" she asked, her curiosity growing. "What do you do?" Liam paused, his fingers tapping lightly on the coffee cup in front of him. "I work in tech," he said, his voice low, almost like he was holding something back. "But it's not as exciting as it sounds." Emma tilted her head, sensing that there was more to the story. "Not exciting?" she asked. "I thought tech was where the big money is." He chuckled, a soft, almost amused sound. "It is," he admitted, "but it's also a lot of hard work. It's not just about the money, it's about building something that lasts." "That sounds noble," Emma said, surprised. "I thought you'd be more like those CEOs you see on TV, all flashy and showy." Liam smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I don't care much for the spotlight," he said quietly. "I'd rather do the work and let it speak for itself." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee. Emma felt a strange sense of peace wash over her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She wasn't used to being around someone like Liam, someone who didn't expect anything from her, who didn't make her feel small. He just accepted her. As they continued talking, Emma couldn't help but wonder why someone like him would even be interested in someone like her. She was just a waitress, after all, struggling to make ends meet. But every time she looked into his eyes, she felt like maybe, just maybe, he saw something in her that she didn't see in herself. But just as things started to feel more natural, something happened that threw Emma off balance. Liam's phone buzzed, interrupting their conversation. He glanced at it quickly before silencing it. "Sorry about that," he said, looking up at her. "Work stuff." Emma nodded, her heart sinking slightly. She had already been feeling out of her element, unsure of how to navigate this new dynamic between them. "It's fine," she said, forcing a smile. "I get it. Work is important." But as Liam stood to leave, Emma couldn't help but feel like something had shifted between them. "I'll see you again, Emma," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "We'll talk more soon." Emma watched him walk out of the cafe, her mind racing. She had no idea where this was going, but one thing was clear. Liam was someone who was different from anyone she had ever met before. As she left the cafe and walked back to her small apartment, Emma couldn't help but wonder if she was making a huge mistake, opening herself up to someone like him. But deep down, she knew that she couldn't let fear hold her back. Maybe this was the chance she had been waiting for. The chance to find something real. Something that wasn't just about surviving. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. The days after the coffee date were a whirlwind for Emma. Her thoughts were constantly filled with Liam. She hadn't expected to feel such a strong connection with someone she had just met, especially not someone like him. He was a millionaire, a tech CEO, with a life that seemed so different from hers. She was a waitress, struggling to make ends meet, while he could probably buy anything he wanted without a second thought. Yet, there was something about him that felt so real, so grounded. He had shown her kindness, and for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. But despite everything, Emma kept questioning herself. She wasn't sure if she was getting too attached too quickly, or if it was just the novelty of someone like Liam being interested in her. One afternoon, Emma was working a long shift at the diner when the familiar sound of the doorbell jingling caught her attention. She looked up from the counter and froze for a moment when she saw Liam walk in. He looked just as handsome as she remembered, but this time, there was something different in his expression. He wasn't just stopping by for coffee, he had something more on his mind. "Hey, Emma," he said, walking over to her. "Got a minute?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly wiped her hands on her apron. "Of course! What's up?" She felt a mix of excitement and nerves at the same time. Liam sat down at the counter, his usual calm demeanor replaced with something more serious. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day," he started, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "About how I'm different from the people you usually meet. I know we come from different worlds, but there's something about you, Emma. I can't stop thinking about it." Emma's stomach flipped, and she looked at him, her mouth going dry. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, almost afraid of what he might say next. He took a deep breath before continuing, his gaze never leaving hers. "I don't know how to explain it, but when I'm with you, I feel like I can be myself. Like I'm not just Liam Parker, the tech CEO, or the guy with the millions in the bank. I'm just Liam, and I want to get to know you more, Emma. I want to see where this could go." His words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she was speechless. Could he really be serious? Or was this just another way for him to pass the time? But deep down, she could sense his sincerity, the way his eyes softened as he spoke. "I don't know if this is a good idea," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, I'm not like you, Liam. I don't have money, I don't have connections. I don't even have a real future planned out. I'm just getting by." Liam reached out and gently placed his hand over hers, his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't need to have it all figured out, Emma," he said. "I don't care about any of that. I care about you. I care about the person you are. And I think we could build something together, something real. Don't you?" Emma stared at their hands, the warmth of his touch sending a ripple of emotions through her. She had never felt more conflicted in her life. Could she really let herself fall for him, someone who seemed to have it all, while she had so little? Could she trust that someone like him would still care about her once he truly saw who she was beneath the surface? She wasn't sure, but there was one thing she knew for sure. She couldn't deny the way she felt when she was with him. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," she said, pulling her hand back gently. It feels too good to be true." Liam gave her a small, understanding smile. "I get it, Emma. I'm not asking you to jump into anything right away. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm serious about getting to know you. If you're willing, we can take things slow. No pressure, no expectations. Just us. Figuring things out together." His words melted the doubts that had been swirling in her mind. Maybe it wasn't about having it all figured out. Maybe it was about taking a chance on something that felt real, something that felt right. Emma took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. "Okay," she said, her voice steady now. "Let's take it slow. Let's see where this goes." Liam's smile widened, and she could see the relief in his eyes. He stood up, his hand still resting lightly on her shoulder. "I'm really glad to hear that, Emma. I promise you won't regret it." As he turned to leave, Emma couldn't help but feel a spark of hope in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something she had never expected. She watched him walk out of the diner, her heart beating a little faster than usual, her mind filled with endless possibilities. She didn't know where this would lead. But for the first time in a long time, she was ready to find out. Weeks passed, and Emma found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She had never expected to feel this way about Liam, especially not after the rough start they had. But each day they spent together, whether it was grabbing coffee or talking for hours on end, she began to realize that maybe, just maybe, this could turn into something more. Liam was different than anyone she had ever met. He wasn't just a successful tech CEO. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuine. Qualities she didn't expect to find in someone from his world. For Emma, someone who had always struggled to make ends meet, it was hard to believe that someone like Liam could truly be interested in her. He was constantly showing her kindness, making her feel special, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was all too good to be true. Still, she felt something real when she was with him, something she couldn't deny. One evening, they met for dinner at a small, intimate restaurant that Emma loved. It was one of those places that had a warm, homey feel, with soft lighting and the scent of garlic and fresh bread filling the air. As she walked in, she spotted Liam at the table they had reserved, his back to her as he looked at the menu. The sight of him made her heart flutter, and she couldn't help but smile as she approached him. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Hey, Emma," he said, standing up to pull out her chair. "I'm glad you could make it." She sat down, feeling a little nervous but excited at the same time. "Of course," she replied, looking at him as he smiled at her. "I've been looking forward to this all week." As they ordered their food and sipped their drinks, the conversation flowed easily between them. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just the easy, natural connection they had developed over the past few weeks. Emma couldn't help but notice how comfortable she felt around him, how he made her feel like she mattered. She wasn't used to being treated like this, and it was starting to feel like a dream. After a while, Liam set down his glass and looked at her with a more serious expression. "There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about, Emma," he said softly. She tilted her head slightly, a little curious but also nervous about what he was going to say. "What is it?" she asked. Liam hesitated for a moment before continuing, his gaze steady. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately, and I know we've only been seeing each other for a little while, but I feel like there's something real here, something worth exploring. I want to be honest with you, Emma." Emma felt a rush of warmth in her chest, but her heart also skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly. Liam took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm falling for you," he said simply. "I know it might sound crazy, but I can't ignore how I feel, and I want to be with you. I know our worlds are different, but I believe we can make this work. I just want to give us a chance, a real chance." Emma stared at him, her mind racing. She hadn't expected him to say that, not so soon, not when things still felt so uncertain between them. But as she looked into his eyes, she could see the sincerity there, the emotion he was trying to convey. She had always been afraid of getting hurt, of opening up to someone who might not feel the same way. But this felt different. She could feel it in her heart. "Liam," she began, her voice soft. "I never thought someone like you would be interested in someone like me. I'm just a waitress. I don't have anything to offer you. I don't have money. I don't have a fancy job. I don't have a perfect life. But I've never felt like this before, and I'm scared. Scared of what could happen, of getting hurt." Liam reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "I don't care about any of that, Emma," he said firmly. "I care about you, who you are, the way you make me feel. You don't need to have anything but yourself. That's enough for me." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had never felt more seen, more understood. Slowly, she squeezed his hand, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly. "But I want to try. I want to see where this goes, with you." Liam's face lit up and he squeezed her hand back. "I promise you, Emma, I'll make it worth it. We'll figure it out together." As they sat there, holding hands in the soft glow of the candlelight, Emma couldn't help but feel a wave of hope wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't scared of what was to come. She was ready to take a leap of faith, ready to trust in something real. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. After that night, everything seemed to change between Emma and Liam. They took things slow, as Liam had promised, but the bond between them grew stronger with every passing day. Emma found herself looking forward to their time together, whether it was a quiet dinner, a walk through the park, or just talking late into the night. Liam made her feel like she mattered, like she was more than just a waitress struggling to get by. For the first time in her life, Emma felt seen, not for what she didn't have, but for who she was. Liam was always there, listening, caring, and showing her that he wasn't just the wealthy CEO with the perfect life. He was a man who wanted to know the real her, the person behind the labels, and Emma couldn't help but fall deeper for him. But just as things were starting to feel right, Emma began to feel a nagging doubt in her heart. She had been trying to ignore it, but it was there, growing louder every day. She still couldn't fully shake the feeling that this relationship was too good to be true, that one day, Liam would realize that she wasn't the woman he thought she was. She had nothing to offer him, nothing compared to the world he came from. One afternoon, while walking through the park together, Emma stopped and turned to Liam. He looked at her, sensing that something was wrong. "What's going on, Emma?" he asked softly. "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" Emma bit her lip, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, Liam," she said quietly. "I keep thinking that you're just going to realize one day that I'm not the person you need, that I'm not enough for you. You have everything: money, success, power, and I have nothing. I'm just a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. I'm not even sure why you're with me." Liam reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "Emma," he said, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "I'm with you because I want to be. I don't care about your job or your financial situation. I care about you, the person you are inside. You're kind, genuine, and you make me feel things I haven't felt in years. I don't want anyone else. I just want you." Emma felt her heart swell at his words. But a part of her still couldn't believe it. "But Liam," she whispered, "what if I'm not enough for you? What if one day you wake up and realize you're living in two different worlds and that we don't belong together?" Liam smiled softly, cupping her face with his hands. "Emma," he said, his voice filled with conviction, "you don't have to be anything other than who you are. You're more than enough. And if there are challenges ahead, we'll face them together. No one is perfect, and our worlds may be different, but that doesn't matter to me. What matters is that I'm with you. That's all that matters." Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes, and she could no longer hold them back. She had been so afraid, so unsure of herself and what the future held. But in that moment, standing there with Liam, she realized that maybe she had been looking at everything all wrong. Maybe it wasn't about what she didn't have, or what she thought she was lacking. Maybe it was about what they shared together, the connection, the understanding, and the love that was growing between them. She wrapped her arms around Liam, holding him tightly, as if to reassure herself that this was real, that they were real. "I'm sorry, Liam," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I've been so scared." "You don't need to apologize," he said softly, stroking her hair. "We all have our fears. But you don't have to face them alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in a long while, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had been holding herself back, afraid to open her heart completely, afraid that the love she was feeling might not be enough. But now, she understood. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about accepting each other, flaws and all. And with Liam, she could do that. The next few weeks passed in a blur, filled with laughter, shared moments, and deeper conversations. They made plans for the future, not just for themselves, but for the life they were building together. Emma knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt, but she was ready to face them with Liam by her side. He had shown her what it meant to trust again, to love without fear, and to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were exactly where they were meant to be. And when Liam took her hand one evening, leading her out onto the balcony of his penthouse, she felt her heart skip a beat as he looked into her eyes. "Emma," he said, his voice low, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to spend it with you. Will you be mine?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, not of doubt, but of pure joy. "Yes, Liam," she whispered, "I'll be yours." In that moment, as the city lights flickered below them and the night air wrapped around them, Emma knew that this was only the beginning of their story, one that would be filled with love, trust, and the kind of happiness she had never thought possible. Months passed, and Emma and Liam's relationship blossomed in ways neither of them had expected. They spent more time together, creating memories and finding joy in the small moments, morning coffee together before work, late-night talks about everything and nothing, weekend trips to places neither had ever been. Liam was not just the man who had saved her from her doubts. He was becoming her best friend, her partner, her everything. Emma still couldn't believe how her life had changed. She had gone from struggling to get by to feeling like she was part of something bigger than herself. But just when things were starting to feel perfect, life threw a curveball they weren't prepared for. One afternoon, Liam got a call while they were having lunch together at a quiet cafe. The tone of his voice immediately shifted when he answered, and Emma could see the tension in his eyes. He excused himself from the table, walking a few steps away to speak privately. Emma tried to ignore the growing sense of unease in her chest as she watched him from across the room. He was usually so calm, so collected, but now there was something different about him. When he returned to the table, his face was clouded with concern. "Emma," he said, sitting down slowly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "It's work," he started, rubbing the back of his neck. "There's been a situation with one of our major projects. It's bigger than we thought, and there are some legal complications that could take a long time to sort out." Emma nodded, trying to process his words. "Is everything okay? Are you okay?" she asked, reaching across the table to take his hand. Liam sighed, clearly frustrated. "I'm fine," he said, though his eyes didn't quite match his words. "But there's a lot of pressure right now, and some things are out of my control. It's complicated." Emma could see how much this was weighing on him. She had always known that his work was demanding, but seeing him so out of sorts made her realize just how much he carried on his shoulders. "Is there anything I can do?" she asked softly, squeezing his hand. He looked at her for a moment, his expression softening. "I don't want to burden you with this," he said quietly, "but there is something you could do." Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" Liam took a deep breath before speaking again. "I'm about to fly out of the country for a few days to meet with some partners. I need to focus on this situation, but I also need to know you're okay with this. I don't want you to feel like I'm pulling away from you." Emma blinked in surprise. "You're going to be gone for a few days?" she asked, the thought of being apart from him hitting her harder than she expected. He nodded. "It's not ideal, but it's necessary." Emma's heart sank at the thought of not having him around, of facing this unknown situation alone. She had gotten so used to having him by her side that the idea of being without him, even for a few days, made her feel vulnerable. But as she looked at him, she realized how much he needed her support, even if she couldn't physically be with him. "I understand," she said softly. "You have to do what's best for your work. I'll be here when you get back." Liam smiled gratefully, his eyes softening. "Thank you, Emma. That means more to me than you know." As the days passed and Liam prepared for his trip, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of unease growing within her. She knew it was just a few days, but it felt like a lifetime. She had never been one to depend on anyone else, but with Liam, everything had changed. She had allowed herself to care so deeply, and the thought of losing that connection, even temporarily, made her heart ache. The night before Liam's flight, they sat together on the couch, their fingers intertwined, watching the city lights flicker through the windows. It felt like a quiet, peaceful moment, and yet Emma could feel the tension in the air. "I'll miss you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam turned to look at her, his expression soft but filled with determination. "I'll miss you too, Emma," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But we'll get through this. I'll be back before you know it." Emma smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I know," she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. The next morning, Liam left for his trip, and Emma found herself alone with her thoughts. It was strange, being without him. The apartment felt quieter, emptier, and the days seemed to drag on. She kept herself busy with work, but there was a constant knot in her stomach, a fear that she couldn't quite shake. As much as she trusted Liam, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen when he came back. Would everything be the same? Or would the distance, both physical and emotional, create a gap that would be harder to bridge? She didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. She was more invested in this relationship than she had ever been in anything before, and that scared her more than anything. But as she went through her days, she reminded herself of what Liam had said, that they would get through this together. The road ahead might not be easy, but Emma was ready to face whatever came next, as long as she wasn't facing it alone. Days turned into weeks, and Liam's absence weighed heavily on Emma. She missed him more than she expected, not just for his presence but for the sense of stability he brought into her life. Every day felt like a quiet countdown until he would return. She kept herself busy, going through the motions of work, but there was always a lingering emptiness when she returned home to their apartment. It was hard not to feel the gap his absence had created. She tried to keep her mind occupied, meeting up with friends, and even spending time at the art gallery she had dreamed of opening for years. But even those small moments of joy were overshadowed by the distance between her and Liam. She couldn't shake the feeling that this time apart might change things between them in ways they couldn't predict. The phone calls and messages from Liam were a comfort, but they weren't enough. She needed him there, beside her, to hold her hand when she needed reassurance, to laugh with her when the world felt too heavy. And then, one evening, after what felt like an eternity, she received a message from Liam. It was short but filled with promise. "I'm on my way back," it said. "I'll be home tomorrow." Her heart skipped a beat as she read those words. She couldn't wait to see him, but at the same time, a wave of nervousness washed over her. What would things be like now? Would everything go back to normal? Or had the time apart created a distance between them that they couldn't bridge? The next day, as she prepared for his return, Emma felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She wanted everything to be just as it had been, to pick up right where they left off, but a small part of her wondered if that was even possible. The doorbell rang, and Emma's heart raced in her chest. She opened the door to find Liam standing there, holding his suitcase, looking tired but undeniably happy to be home. He smiled as soon as he saw her, his eyes lighting up. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice warm and familiar. Emma felt the tension in her chest ease just by hearing his voice. "Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know what to say next. She just stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift off her shoulders. He held her tightly, and for a moment, everything else in the world faded away. "I missed you," Emma whispered, her voice muffled against his chest. "I missed you too," Liam replied, his voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a long time, just holding each other, the world outside forgotten. When they finally pulled away, Liam smiled at her, his eyes soft and reassuring. "I'm glad to be home," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "I missed you more than I can put into words." Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with happiness. She knew, deep down, that they had weathered the storm of distance and come out stronger. "I'm glad you're back," she said softly, her eyes locked onto his. There was a long pause as they looked at each other, both of them feeling the weight of what they had been through. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice serious, yet filled with warmth. "Emma, I know this hasn't been easy. I've been gone, and I know you've had to carry a lot of weight on your own. But I want you to know something. No matter what happens, I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. And we're going to get through anything that comes our way. Together." Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of doubt or fear. They were tears of relief, of knowing that she wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to carry the weight of the world by herself. Liam was here, and he meant every word. She nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I believe you," she said, her voice steady and filled with certainty. And in that moment, Emma knew that they were ready to face whatever the future held. Together, the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. But with Liam by her side, she was ready to take it on. They had both learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being there for each other, no matter what. With that knowledge, Emma knew that the journey they had started together was just beginning. And she was ready to take the next step, knowing that Liam would be right there beside her, every step of the way. As the weeks passed after Liam's return, Emma felt like her life was finally falling into place. The distance that had once felt so overwhelming now seemed like a distant memory. They had weathered the storm of time apart, and with each passing day, their bond grew stronger. Liam was everything she had dreamed of, and more. He was patient, understanding, and supportive. And more than that, he was completely invested in their relationship. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt truly happy, truly loved. They continued to build a life together, sharing experiences and supporting each other through the ups and downs. Liam's work still demanded much of his time, but they learned to make it work, to balance their personal lives with the pressures of his career. There were still challenges. Of course, no relationship was without them. There were times when Emma struggled with her insecurities, moments when she wondered if she truly belonged in Liam's world. But each time those doubts crept in, Liam was there, reminding her that they were in this together. He reassured her that her worth wasn't tied to what she had or didn't have, but to who she was as a person. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights flicker below them, Liam turned to Emma, a serious expression on his face. "Emma," he said, his voice gentle but filled with intent. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." Emma looked at him, her heart racing slightly. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft with curiosity. Liam took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto hers. "I know we've been through a lot. And I know that life isn't always perfect. But I can't imagine my life without you in it. You've made me a better person, Emma. You've shown me what love really is, and for that, I'll be forever grateful. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, unsure of where this conversation was going. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Liam smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and love. "I'm saying I want to marry you, Emma," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to make you my forever. Will you marry me?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop around her. She looked at him, the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had shown her that love was worth fighting for. Her mind raced, her emotions swirling. This was the moment she had always dreamed of, the moment when everything she had hoped for came true. But as the shock of his words settled in, she realized that she had no doubt in her heart. She had no hesitation, no fear. She knew without a doubt that this was the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. "Yes," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes, Liam, I'll marry you." Liam's smile widened, and in that moment, Emma felt her heart overflow with joy. He reached for her hand, pulling her close and pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I love you so much, Emma," he said softly. "I promise to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me." Emma held him tightly, her heart full of love and gratitude. "I love you too, Liam," she whispered, feeling like she was finally home. And so, in that moment, surrounded by the glow of the city lights and the warmth of each other's embrace, they began the next chapter of their story. A story of love, trust, and the promise of forever. They had faced their fears, overcome their doubts, and discovered that love, when it's real, can withstand anything. It wasn't about perfection, but about the willingness to fight for each other, to stand by one another through every challenge. Together, they were stronger than they had ever been apart. And as they walked hand in hand into their future, they knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together. For Emma and Liam, their love story was just beginning.